Greetings, everyone. I'm Karthik from Maithri Aquatech, and we welcome you to the sixth episode of AquaTalks, our webinar series promoting thought leadership and knowledge sharing in the sphere of water. We would like to acknowledge the support of Rotary, Bangalore, Whitefield Central, and Sustainable Enterprises for Water and Health, also known as SEWA, both in collaboration with whom we bring you this week's episode. We also thank the members of these organizations for participating in the episode. Before we continue, any questions that the participants have can be entered into the chat in the user interface, which we will answer during the episode. We request everyone, apart from the panelists, to stay on mute and have their videos off. The topic of today's episode is investing in safe water is investing into the country's future. For the panelists, we have invited Mr. Anand Rudra, who is a senior program management specialist and water advisor with the USAID India mission. He is a developmental specialist with over 30 years of experience, hands-on experience in urban development and public health programs. Mr. Anand Rudra also has experience in strategic programmatic support on cross-cutting urban development initiatives to South Asia missions and has worked closely with host mission government institutions, international donors, national and international non-governmental organizations, that is NGOs, and community-based organizations and sector professionals. Also as a panelist, we have Mr. Divyang Waghela, the head of the Tata Water Mission at the Tata Trust. He has over 15 years of experience in the development space. He's also a director of the Coastal Salinity Prevention Cell in Ahmedabad, which works to evolve sustainable approaches for salinity ingress prevention and mitigation and enhance livelihood resilience of coastal communities through multi-thematic interventions. Mr. Divyang Waghela has anchored one of India's biggest fellowship programs, namely Zilla Swachh Bharat Prerak, also known as ZSBP, a collaborative effort of Tata Trust and Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation under the Government of India. This was designed to support Swachh Bharat mission by placing young professionals across 500 districts in 29 states. Once again, thank you to both the panelists for joining us in this episode. Coming to the topic, investment in safe water is an important topic, more now than ever. India may have come far in improving access to safe water, but with rapid rate of urbanization and a fast-growing population, a greater investment of efforts have to be made in protecting India's water resources, improving management of available water resources, while also simultaneously working on improving last mile connectivity. Mr. Anand Rudra, do you have a few points you want to share as a brief introduction into this topic?
Sure. Thank you so much, Karthik, and good afternoon, distinguished guests. It's an honor for me to be present today to participate in the AquaTech webinar series. My heartiest congratulations to the hosts, Maithri Aquatech, for the successful event. To begin with, USAID shares the Government of India's vision of sustainable urban development, particularly its efforts to provide clean water and improved sanitation to the low-income urban population. The challenging situation in urban slums, which do not always receive adequate water and sanitation services, is a key focus area in our cooperation. Moving on, recently I was scanning through a lot of these articles and seeing the newspapers, and one of the things that struck me very importantly was something which would be very relevant to today's discussion, which is in a way of investment in economy. What would be of interest to a country's finance minister in water and sanitation during these, tumultuous times? And it's very interesting to note that we have got much to link WASH with the concerns of finance ministry as well as economics and investments in a country. First, the quality of wash. In particular, hygiene measures like hand washing are closely bound with trajectories of the pandemic, as stated by the CDC, and so many things that you're hearing daily from the Ministry of Health. Second, having water and toilets available at arm's distance makes it easier for communities to adhere to lockdown measures for the greater good. Third, the breakdown of wash services threatens to bring further health impacts, social disruptions, and economic losses. So, in short, the lack of wash services, which is estimated to cost close in the world to about $260 billion. I think the figures will be varying with various reports. I think this is a very key part of investments And I think it's just not about the times such as what we're going through right now, but even during normalcy times, this is very key to basically having a normal life in the city, in the country as a whole. So thank you once again, Karthik, for allowing us to be part of this esteemed panel, and all the best wishes. And I'm seeing familiar faces around, including Divyang, so that makes me feel comfortable. Thank you so much.
Mr. Divyang, if you could give a brief view on the topic from your end as well. Could you unmute yourself, sir, please?
Sorry. Yeah, hi. So good afternoon, everyone. I think I echo Anand's thought that I think very familiar names are there. I also could see some familiar faces. So I think it's great to reconnect. I think with many of them after almost 15 months virtually. So, and I would like to also thank Naveen and Karthik and team from Maithri Aquatech for arranging this interesting discussion. So I think it's important that I think what Anand mentioned about the the investment in the water sector is very, very critical. But I think before I come to the topic on the investment part or investment in the safe water, I would also like to highlight some of the key elements in the water value chain, because I think the water is quite a complex ecosystem, and I think we need to give a good context to that particular issue for today's interaction. So I think if we divide water value chain into 5 core elements, the first is the source. So we look at the rainwater, glaciers, artificial production, which I think Maithri Aquatech has actually been working on the technology, recycling or reuse. I think that's a very basic fundamental element of our water value chain. The second part is about the storage, and we know that I think India is dependent on largely on the groundwater storage, and the surface water is a bit of a challenge in terms of the storage perspective for the country, and many states are actually facing a lot of supply issues because of the limited storage availability. The third part is about the distribution, and I think we can look at the distribution into 2 perspectives. One is about the rural distribution and the urban distribution. Urban distribution, we know that it's quite efficient in terms of the 65% of the households are connected with the pipe water supply. But I think the wastage or per capita usage is comparatively very, very high. But if you see the other side in the rural distribution, I think that's one of the biggest challenge the country has been facing. So out of around 19 crore rural households, as of today, around only 15 crore households are still to be covered with the pipe connectivity. So the access part is a big challenge in the distribution ecosystem in the water value chain. The fourth element, what I would like to discuss about the consumption part. So consumption in terms of the agriculture, domestic, industrial, and ecological use. And we know that I think the maximum water is being consumed for the agriculture purpose. And I think we are also facing the challenges in terms of the water over usage in the agriculture space. And the last part is about the discharge and reuse, which is broadly divided into municipal waste or industrial waste or a grey water management. And that's also one of the critical elements in terms of the whole water cycle. Each element has its own challenges, but I think I just would like to name 2 or 3 which are I think most critical when you look at water as a core tool. The excessive water used in agriculture in India, I think we are using 3 to 5 times more irrigation water for crop production than China, US, and Israel. So we know that many farmers have traditionally grown water intensive crops like paddy, sugarcane. Some of them are for the food security, but some of them are for the more economic gain. This also has a very high nexus about the power and water. The free electricity actually push more groundwater extraction, and I think currently we are broadly using 90% of the groundwater for the agriculture purpose. Second part is about the low treatment and reuse of the wastewater. So after whatever the water we use at the household purpose, near 80% lands in flowing out of the wastewater or grey water, and the treatment and recycle for the reuse of this water is absolutely like non-existent. In urban, as I mentioned, it's very, very small scale, but in rural, it's broadly, I think I would say nil. And if we look at the countries like Israel, they are actually using 100% of its water and recycling almost 94%. And they are actually doing the one step extra and metering all their water for the irrigation as well as the domestic use. The last part, I think, is also a data point in terms of the low storage of rainwater. And I think in India, we capture only 8% of the total annual rainfall. In contrast to countries like Australia or Israel, they capture almost 50% of the rainfall, what they receive. In a nutshell, I think most of what water we are used in either for, the agriculture or other domestic purpose is not being optimally recycled or reused. So I would say it's in a way, it's a wastage. I think, and that actually creates a huge demand and supply gap for the water. And I think as we are seeing, the whole gap is widening quite fast, quite rapidly. But I think I also will see a silver lining in the midst of all these challenges. If you look at in last 5 to 7 years, I think the government has started looking at the water as a core challenge, and I think more futuristic approach they have started taking. And if I talk about specifically on the drinking water perspective, I think the government has started two good things. One thing is about actually they wanted to look the water as a common property resource and try to build all different 7 ministry and around 10 departments who are managing water. They wanted to bring everyone together. And that's why they have created this Jal Shakti Mantrayal as a coordinating ministry. I think that's the one good silver lining in terms of a first step towards looking at the water secure India. If now coming to because the trust, at the trust, we broadly work on the drinking water sector. We do work on a water security, but on a very small scale. On a drinking water space, we have been working in around more than 12 states across India, predominantly in the rural area. And what we realized, and if you see since 1970, where the water supply department has been created under the government of India, under the central government, till I think till 2015 or 2016, close to 3 lakh crore investment has been done by the center or the states to ensure pipe water supply system to the rural households. And if you see the data in terms of results, I think only around 19 to 20% of the households were connected with pipe water supply. So they either had challenges on the sources part, or women and adults and girls have to travel long distance to fetch the water. The quality parameters, we know that the quality is becoming now more and more critical for the country to look at. Now, I think the paradigm shift we are seeing now, I think the 2019, the government of India announced the Jal Jeevan Mission program, and they have allocated around 3.5 lakh crore investments, around $50 billion investment by 2024 to ensure that 100% rural households should get the tap connectivity. They should get safe, adequate, assured, and regular water supply in their doorstep. So I think the investment is huge. Obviously, I think it's a 3.5 lakh crore is unparalleled to any other similar schemes in a shorter duration of time is going to be invested. And hence, I think it's very, very critical that how this investment is going to be optimized in terms of efficiency, how this money which is going to be invested to sustain a longer period of time. And I think that's going to be the area where the people and stakeholders like all of us who are part of this webinar need to play some role. And I think that's the crux of the investment. This investment definitely helps us in terms of improving the health standards, I think health situation in the country, in terms of reducing, the waterborne diseases, reducing the investment related to medical cost for that. And obviously the opportunity cost loss could be also saved. So that way I see an investment which is currently being planned by the government, because the water is a state subject. It is going to be a kind of a game changing in the changing the landscape and water sector in India. So that's, I think, I wanted to share in terms of my thoughts on initial thoughts. And I think looking forward to a great interaction with the friends from the sector. I think they are much experienced than me, but I think they've brought a tremendous amount of rich experience on the ground, and I would be looking forward to have a more interaction. Thanks, Karthik.
Thank you, Mr. Divyang. Thanks for your perspective. Mr. Anand Rudra, with USAID having worked with many entities, both private and public, what would you say would be USAID's work as a development partner in planning of investments in the water space in India?
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. USAID is part of a team of 80 such missions around the world, and our headquarters is with USAID Washington. We are part of the US government as we speak, and in host missions we work as bilateral agencies with host countries. In India, we are working with the government of India, but we are representing the US government. And one of the key things in planning what we do is basically to first understand what are we basically planning for. One of the things is to understand the counterpart, the host country's initial thinking and other efforts also. So let me begin with saying this, that in 2019, which is what, like 2 years back, it's a circular process. USA designated 8 high priority host countries. India is one of them. So that's one of the first thing that I wanted to mention is India is one of the 8 countries out of the 80 that we are talking of, which pursuant to the requirements by Senator Paul Simon Water, which is a World Act. It's an act which was in 2014. And it is guided by US Global Water Strategy, which is like in the agency worldwide that we have to basically implement. Now, that designates India as a high priority WASH country. And because of that, we basically have a water and development plan. It's a country plan. For the year 19, it was coming in. That means we have a plan from 20 to 25. Under this plan, US and India partners with the host country, in this case, the government of India, to create healthier urban communities by increasing access to clean water and sanitation. It is also looking to partner on identifying methods which basically allow to make clean water and safe sanitation available to en masse. Particularly in this case, we are looking at low-income and urban poor populations. Now, how is USA planning to roll out this work plan as we speak? How has it started to do so? If you notice what I just said, 2020 it started and we are just in the first year of its implementation, okay? So there are some development results that we basically are following as part of our work plan of the high priority country water planning for USA. The first one is strengthening sector governance and financing. In this, USAID mission is going to support national GOI WASH missions. In this case, as I think Divyang highlighted, and one of the things that I'm sure would be also knowing, that USAID is a partner to the government of India in Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, as well as the Amrut program. So that's one of the key things, is to strengthen sector governance and finance of our counterpart GOI WASH missions. More specifically, USAID is going to support by providing technical assistance for adopting new technologies, business models, community engagement, planning methods, implementation of e-learning and like education materials, and strengthening management and information systems. So like overall, it's the strengthening of the system as well as the governance in which we basically would be looking at through one of our pillars, which is the development pillar number 1. The second development pillar is increasing sustainability access and the practice of key hygiene behaviors. It's all about behavior change issues and how do I change the mindset of somebody to do something. Clean water is just not my responsibility, but it's also the person who is using it, the POU, the point of use person. So how do I basically change the behaviors of these kind of things? Another development sector pillar that we basically are looking at to roll out our work plan is increasing sustainable access to safe drinking water. Now, in this, which is basically more pertinent to the topic that we're talking, to increase access to safe drinking water, USAID will support, as I repeat, 2 decentralized solutions, including community-based business models for drinking water, water financing reforms, urban water body conservation, technology solutions, and like more efficient methodologies, including economics for cost recovery, be it non-revenue water. So USAID will also support the government of India institutions with local level capacity building and knowledge about exposures and exchanges between different best practices. Lastly, one of the last pillars, which is the 4th pillar, is about improving the management of water resources. Again, Divyang touched upon some of those elements, but this is something which is very critical. Approximately 70% of India's sewage is randomly dumped, polluting most of the country's water bodies, and improving sanitation will directly improve the management of such issues, including the water resources. And that's the way we basically are looking at the approach of rolling out our work plan. And at the end of this 5-year strategy, which is 20 to 25 or 26, we feel we would be achieving the results in the form of, increasing sustainable access of both sanitation and clean water hygiene behaviors, accessing safe water for vulnerable population, improving policies and institutional capacities, and last but not the least is enhancing financial leveraging from both private as well as public sources. So that's in a nutshell, Karthik, how we are looking at as an agency to roll out what we would like to do in a planning mode.
All right, sir. Thank you. You've mentioned that you're working with the government of India on various initiatives. Would you mind elaborating on those as well? I mean, the work that USAID is doing with the government of India.
Sure. We basically are, as I mentioned, a bilateral agency, which means like we are part of an international country. In this case, the US government. We have a bilateral agency agreement with the government of India. In addition to that, with the technical ministry, which is in this case the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, we have a WASH MOU, which is a 5-year partnership. The first one was from 2015 till 2019 end. The second one just started from last year till 2025, which promotes the bilateral partnership between the two countries, specifically for WASH. And under this, USAID actually supports to provide knowledge partnership to the government to supports its vision. It's not that I'm doing something or we are doing something to say this is what we want, but we are doing something to support what the government of India is wanting to do for strengthening clean water, improving sanitation services, improving hygiene services. But our focus is primarily for the low-income urban Indian populations in India, Karthik. So, and under this knowledge partnerships, USAID and MOA, which is the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, is expected to share expertise, best practices, innovations, technologies in support of the government of India's efforts to strengthen WASH in urban areas. And one of the key elements is, again, relevant to this topic, is helping to increase the access to safe drinking water among the vulnerable populations. And touching on a point which I think Divyang also nicely mentioned, we have been in discussion with the government, particularly the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, to whom the urban part of the Jal Shakti Ministry's efforts has now come into fray. So in short, what I'm trying to say is what Jal Shakti mission is trying to do pan-India to support water issues, rural and urban. That urban part is something which the Amrut project, which is the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, one of the pillars, is looking to address. And under Amrut, there is a special vehicle, which is the Jal Jeevan Mission urban vehicle, which has basically been also started. We basically are supporting the team of the Jal Jeevan Mission urban from the ministry to roll out exactly what Divyang mentioned about addressing those issues under the umbrella Jal Shakti Ministry, but in the urban areas. So there is a lot of opportunities that we basically are looking forward to start, because it's just started from the last 1 year. But this is something which I think has been a very key component for not just doing some things from the past, which is the Swachh Bharat mission and Amrut, but very recently the water part has basically come up as a key component with which we have been associated with the government of India.
Great. Thank you, sir. Mr. Divyang, could you also tell us about the roles that Tata Trust themselves are playing, especially with you being a part of the corporate space and also doing work along with a few government agencies? What role does an organization like Tata Trust have in especially the state in which water exists in India?
Yeah, so yeah, Karthik, I think it's important that I think how we can play a role as an enabler. So as a philanthropy, I think we need to be very careful in terms of which areas we need to choose to invest. Since all of us have a finite resource, it's critical to how we strategize to do a value addition and to achieve a larger goals with better efficiency and in a sustainable manner. With that context, we try to work in core 3 areas. Obviously, I think we work on water quality elements, water security element, water access part, sanitation and hygiene are definitely part of it. So that, I think, the verticals I would not go into detail, because I think most of us are quite aware about what actually all those things are. However, I think we try to look at in three core areas. So the one is about the promoting innovation and knowledge building. Now, I think I always share this, that once we get an answer to any question, our question gets changed. So I think the whole development space is so dynamic. We need to keep on innovating on our solutions. So we can't just keep saying, okay, we have found the solution. I think there are new emerging challenges will come into place, and I think we have to address it. So, and hence I think the innovation is very critical factor into it. And we actually look at two kind of innovation. One is a technology innovation by supporting the research. So we do work with the few research institution, academic institutions, private sector investors also, private sector innovators also. So try and see that how these innovative technologies could be able to help solve the larger problem in the water space. Second part is on approach innovation. So technology innovation, I think the whole technical aspects is quite understood. But if you look at the India as a geography, it's quite diverse. So we have a 7,000 kilometer long coastline. We have 12 states who has like under the Himalayan region. We have a desert, we have a cold desert. So I think we are quite a diverse country, and I think the one solution won't fit all. And hence I think the approach innovation is also important, and that's why I think we try to do that, how we can create new approaches by identifying the operating models, alternative operating models, which can be unconventional. It cannot be a conventional models, but alternative operating models, which are more efficient and effective, and also contextual to geography specific problem, I think. So that's a two broader area which I think we work on innovation and the knowledge building. Within knowledge building, we try to see that how good practices could be promoted to the larger stakeholder, because I think the challenge generally we face that we have a very huge number of islands of success, but we don't have a scaled model. So how we can actually foster those island of success into larger stakeholders to adopt it? It could be the government or a donors or a CSRs, but I think how this could be adopted by the larger stakeholders, so that you have an economy of scale for such kind of operating models or a technology innovation. So you need to create that kind of a ecosystem for that. Second part, I think we play as a system strengthening, or I would say an ecosystem enabler. Investment to facilitate the implementation of large-scale program, which can demonstrate good, not only operating models, but also good impacts on ground. I think that's the crux of it. And as I mentioned earlier, the government has been investing resources since 70 years, since independence. Still, I think sometimes we may not be actually absolutely finding the right kind of solutions, or maybe the situation changes so drastically, so we need to find out alternative solutions or the new solutions. So I think we need to look at how these resources could be used effectively, so it can actually sustain for a longer period of time. And hence I think that ecosystem enabler role is very, very important, and as a philanthropy we can play that role. I think the area where I think someone would not be willing to put money, I think there where I think we need to put that money. So it could be, I would say, a soft risk money or a high risk money, but that money should at least foster the whole ecosystem to foster on a larger scale. Just give you a few examples on that, one or two examples. One of the programs we have been doing on a spring shade management in Uttarakhand and Nagaland. Now we have started at a very small scale. We started with around 30 villages, but then we realized that this is, I think, the way to solve the problem on the hills about the water security. We actually tied up with the forest department and the water resource department. We brought the stakeholders together, and then now this project is being implemented almost in 10 to 12 districts across Uttarakhand and around 11 districts in Nagaland. So I think how we can foster those innovative models and then scale it up. So that's the one area we do that. Second part is on an ecosystem or a system strengthening is about the creating a social capital. Now, if we see in the water space, I think currently, if you go for a large-scale recruitment, I think you are going to find a very limited, qualified human resources who are willing to go to the remote areas and then work. So you need to create the social capital for that space. I think this Zilla Swachh Bharat Prerak program, the fellowship program, what you mentioned is the effort towards that system strengthening. The young minds which don't have any kind of a boundaries, which actually think out of the box and actually work in any kind of environment. So I think we train them, we actually provide them a platform, an opportunity to, build their career around it. So I think bring those social capital into the development sector is very, very important. And hence I think social capital development is another role we can play as a system strengthening. The third part, which I think is very critical, and I think it's also becoming very prominent now, that market-based approach through technology-based solution is also important. And I think we have supported some of the, similar kind of institutions who have been actually looking at the market-based approach. We have supported few institutions over a period of last few years, 5 years. Obviously, I think we looked at more as an innovation space or looking at the targeted subsidy. But I think those institutions have, I think now we've been in a position to share their knowledge, learning, expertise to the larger water sector. So I think those kind of investment also helps us in terms of how you can giving back to the sector by investing into the emerging institutions or organizations. The last part, I think, which I think we strongly believe, and our management also believe, that training and capacity building of institutions and enterprise, that's I think going to be the future of future solutions for the water or any other sector. These are the two institutional framework who are going to sustain when everyone is going to be out. So maybe as an enabler, we may come out of that space, but these institutions and enterprises, social enterprises or other enterprises, will remain because they are going to be a service provider for the solutions. And hence, I think it's equally important you build their capacity, you train them, and you enhance their ability to, building a resilience within their system so that they can find the right kind of a solution in future when they find new difficulties, because we can't be perpetually there. I think we understand that, and hence I think this creating institutions and individuals and social enterprise is going to be a very critical element of our strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Divyang. Both USAID and Tata Trust are ardent supporters of the public-private partnership model, where both the government and private organizations work together for a social cause. So I wanted to ask Mr. Anand Rudra, given that USAID is working with the government and also I believe on certain projects with private companies, could you tell us about the work that you're doing along with the private sector companies in this space?
Yeah, Karthik, to begin with, we are already working with Tata Trust. So Divyang and I are already friends. So just to basically leave aside the other issues. So yeah, there are a lot of elements and things that we are addressing. But probably one of the key things which is driving us is the private sector engagement policy. We have an agency-wide private sector engagement policy, which is like encouraging the work not just to do with private sector, but to bring private sector into the development programs. And it's like we are doing work within our own compound, but here is something that we basically are encouraging private sectors to basically think beyond their walls, beyond their peripheries of what it is. That is one. So yeah, thanks, and we're more than glad to basically share some of the work that we have done in the past. To begin with, in 2014, we had an excellent partnership with one of our water kiosk partners, which is Water Health. And along with the Bangalore Municipal Corporation, this partnership ran for about 3-4 years. We basically helped in putting together around 25 water health centers, which is the water ATM kiosks across the city slums, which was at that time we were working out as a thumb rule, about it came to about 1/8 or 1/9 of the total number of slum sites across the wards. Each of these water health centers, as we basically noted during that time, was serving close to about 1,250 households, which you multiply by 4 or 5 as the numbers come in for beneficiaries. And the centers are set up as we basically were very glad to partner with through a public-private partnership. Why? The land, raw water, source, and electricity came in from the municipal corporation, which is the authority, the local, the plant hardware. It came in from the private sector support. And there were other elements where donors such as us, we basically pumped in for other elements of management, manpower, and other stuff. So I think that was a great opportunity for us to get into the water sector. This is, I'm talking about 2014. And one of the things that came up thereafter was, because of that support, I think it brought in more private sector partners to the team. And with more companies such as Citibank, Gap, Hinduja, Global Solutions, and others, that Bangalore project, which started off and basically ended with our element of 25 as the milestone to achieve, went ahead. Again, I repeat, went ahead. Kudos to the team. Kudos to the management of the water health team. It went up to close to about 65 centers as we speak from the 25 that we basically just partnered with. The other key thing which I would like to bring to the record is a relationship that we are having currently with an organization which is the Safe Water Network, and implementing the partnership under them, which is called SEVA, which is Sustainable Enterprises for Water and Health. Under this, we are focusing primarily on the last mile connectivity of delivery of safe drinking water to places where it can't reach. Simple. We basically have piped water facilities. We have piped water plans. We have things which are there, but still it is not being implemented, or because of some reasons can't happen. That's where I think there is a role that organizations such as Safe Water Networks, the Water Health, and others basically can provide that last mile connectivity. So coming back on the SEVA project, we basically are partnering with them to expand that base of that last mile connectivity opportunity, providing this cohort of stakeholders to be advisors to the government of India and the public at large, because they've got a great mine of information that I think would be very relevant to understand how do we plug that last mile connectivity. Who else than the practitioners, just like a city engineer? In this case, it is the implementers of the small water enterprises that can bring that experience. So I think working with the SEVA project provides us that opportunity to bring that thought, the advisory, the institutional knowledge into this sector. And as we speak, the partnership is across around 15 cities, 11 states. We I think are reaching out to more than 70,000 beneficiaries for this access to clean water. And we expect, hopefully, that this number of outreach will double up in the next year. Another partnership, Karthik, that would be very interesting to share is about a relationship with another NGO called Cure. With them, we are working in around 10 cities, again, mobilizing communities to basically be the champions for the safe water access as well as improved sanitation facilities to be brought into their communities. And the private sector component in this is, again, the corporates who basically bring in hardware support to basically, cover up the cost of pipes or taps and other key ingredients of a wash program, including IC materials also. And these wash community members basically are trained by this project to basically raise the voice, raise the concerns, and go and connect with the city officials. So our project basically acts as the facilitators between the community as well as the service providers. And we are very glad that this project has been very successfully been running for the last 5 years across 140 slum sites, across 10 cities, and reaching to more than 1 lakh households as we speak. Moving on, the flavor of the times to come, we are also partnering with, private sector banks and the non-banking things and other stuff, including Caspian and Indus Bank, for providing small-scale loan opportunities to people who would like to take loans for sanitation sector work. At this stage, that's the kind of support that we're doing under the Swachh Bharat mission in partnership. But we are very seriously, and I'm as we speak, I'm into this conversation very seriously with some of our partners, looking at how can the same thing be done for the same kind of cohort who are looking for water kind of a sector loans and other things to implement at their sites. So we have our partnerships with Caspian and Indus Bank already there. We are open to basically have exploratory discussions with people who would like to basically use that opportunity and take the support from them. The last two ones are a little like milestones that we are very proud to basically share, Karthik. One is our partnership with Microsoft. Through them, we basically helped shape up e-tutorials that basically are on the website of the Swachh Bharat Mission portal. And city managers, officials, anybody you name it, who has got something or the other to do with Swachh Bharat Mission in their own respective cities and towns, they basically are encouraged to basically use the e-tutorials and get a certification so that they basically can implement the good practices. Let's say somebody in Coimbatore wants to learn what is happening in Odisha. Somebody from Odisha wants to know what is happening in Gujarat. So this cross-cutting opportunity through this e-tutorial portal has been a great success. And again, the private sector partnership is with Microsoft. Finally, I'm sure most of the people who are listening and other people in the country are using it, is the Google Swachh Toilet Locator. The Google is a partner to us who has helped us basically put together this package in which the toilets are basically not just located in GIS terms and GPS terms, but they are also assessed about the quality and the service which basically it has. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, we have covered close to about 60,000 of such toilets across the country. Why am I saying this, Karthik? Because I am very keen to basically see this kind of a thing being replicated in the water sector. I'm very in close discussion with the Jal Mission, as well as with my Seva partners and other people with whom USAID is working on the water sector to replicate something that we have already done with sanitation, because we started working in the sanitation space since 2014-15 when the Swachh Bharat mission was already started. So we are planning to pick up those lessons of our successes, including private sector partnerships, into the water partnerships as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. Given that with projects that, of course, use the PPP model, with government being involved, with private companies being involved, there are a lot of stakeholders that work together on projects to set up, let's say, drinking water for villages that have not had access to drinking water in the past. Mr. Divyang, considering the work that Tata Trust and the Tata Water Mission has done, would you say that one could ensure a sustainability of drinking water systems by creating an accountability mechanism, perhaps, for service providers?
Yeah, I think, thanks for this. This is a quite important point. I think you raised about the accountability, because I think maybe down the line 5 years, or maybe as Anand mentioned, and both urban and rural are going to have a good amount of water supply. Now, and I think who is going to be measuring or monitoring those performance indicators, whether we are supplying regular water, whether we are supplying enough water, whether we are supplying required quality of water or not. So I think these are going to be a very important elements. I think I can share with you a few examples on rural, because urban, I think there have been examples in terms of when the private sector come into play. I think they actually meet all those quality standards and they are accountable for it. Many of the water kiosks now also has to register under the water quality parameters and display their water quality reports every day. So they actually are setting some kind of examples. I think the same kind of a model is not currently being replicated into municipal utility services, but I'm sure I think that's going to be there. But I think what we've done in rural India, because our focus has been in the rural, we wanted to look at how we can bring the technology solutions and similar kind of accountability metrics for the rural context also. So we did a pilot with the Government of India and in terms of a Jal Jeevan Mission program, and set up a IoT-based sensors in around 10 to 12 different locations. It's are all different locations. So somewhere in a very Himalayan region in Uttarakhand, something in Himachal Pradesh, very remote areas of Rajasthan or Gujarat, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh. I think we try to demonstrate that the power of information need to be provided to the communities, because ultimately they are the users. And as per the, the Jal Jeevan Mission guidelines, or as per the 73rd Amendment, they are also going to be the managers of the systems. So the system sustainability depend on how much good information they are going to get themselves. And hence, I think this kind of automation is very, very critical. So we actually started using this IoT pilots in this 10, 12 states. We have got amazing results. So in terms of, we have got every day how much disinfection is being done for that particular water, which is being supplied by the panchayat or a water committee. So water committee get the data on a SMS that whether the chlorination has been done, or if it's being done, what is the level. Based on that, the sarpanch or the water committee member can call the operator and say, you have not done the chlorination yesterday, you have to do it today. So I think the power of information need to be put up to the users. That's, I think, the first thing which we started doing. Second, I think we also would like to see that how the rationalization of the water tariff need to be introduced into the rural India. Because I think the whole rationalization is going to be challenging, because the usage will depend in terms of the sustainability of a sources. So if they are not aware about how much water is they are going to use or they are using, they will not be able to take any steps about the recharging of water, or maybe replenishing the groundwater. So we have started measuring the water sources on a groundwater sources, and that also gives the data to every day to the panchayats. So based on the whole analysis of the data, they can say whether they need to take a kind of a water recharging interventions or not. And few villages have started doing it. They've got the money from the Finance Commission. They've got the money from the MNREGA. They've started investing those money for meeting this water recharging, rainwater harvesting, and other elements, because they know that they are actually running short of water, because water has come to the households and people started wasting it. So that way, I think it's important that the user becomes a manager, and that this tool for information through IoT becomes critical. And I think that's what currently many states have started, this universalization of water IoT-based systems monitoring to create accountability metrics, not only with the panchayat, but also at the service provided with the PhD department. So that's, I think, the starting point, what we have done recently.
Thank you, Mr. Divyang. Another question that I have for you is, of course, Tata Trust has probably also worked with funding agencies out there to help pitch new innovative technologies or the like. What would you say in your experience would help young companies with innovative products help pitch better, to these funding agencies?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, and I think it also requires a kind of a very specific institutional interface, because sometimes the not philanthropic, I would say, but as a social development professional, sometimes you don't think out of the box, and when you talk about the business, I think you have your own boundaries. So, but I think the trust have actually created an institution called a Social Alpha, or a FISC, which is called Foundation of Innovation and Social Enterprise, which actually is providing that platform. And I think that not only on the water sector, across sectors, specifically for the social development space, I think they actually look at all those social entrepreneurs and providing them not only in fine-tuning the technology solution, but also try to look at how that business acumen can be brought in. So how you can create a business plan. You look at the vision for 5 to 10 years, how you can pitch your ideas to the VCs or funders, so that you don't only limit it to an innovator, but also you become a kind of a successful entrepreneur in that space. So I think the journey from innovator to entrepreneur is very important, and I think someone has to handhold that kind of role. And I think this institution, which has been incubated by the trust, now it's a full-fledged institution, has been working with international donors, Ministry of all the ministries with the government, and I think creating that whole enabling factor or environment for new companies, startup innovators to come and try their ideas in that space.
Mr. Anand, what opportunities would you say are available right now in the current Indian market where people could actually invest into the water sector? Like, what specific projects are there that we could look at?
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. I think this is a pretty broad area, but I think one of the key things I should start off by saying is the opportunity first starts with an ecosystem being there. Like in a country like India, let's say I'm trying to do something about sanitation, and let's say Swachh Bharat mission is not around, just for a while, and you think what you're trying to do. And you're saying that you're trying to do something for the last 50, 60 years. And then suddenly this thing comes from the top down, which says the government is also looking at it with the same gusto as what you have been in the sector development or non-development sector have been trying to do. So I think the ecosystem is a big a push that can help as an opportunity. In this case, talking in the water space, what my fellow panel members also mentioned again and again, and the elements of the Jal Shakti Ministry, for example, the Jal Jeevan Mission, for example, they throw out a lot of opportunities. Moving on, using of digital platforms for capacity building. I think that's a great opportunity for us to basically being engaged in sharing thoughts at a remote site, or basically in the conditions that we are going through. Currently, again, the national calamities, the pandemics that we are looking at. Challenge, yes, but that can also provide you an opportunity. How during this time, during a lockdown, how can I basically do something for this sector that can basically be business, that can be perhaps things which basically somebody else has not thought of. Suddenly there's a big surge, not just about the pandemic, but about the usage of social media, WhatsApp groups and other stuff. So messaging is something that's there. Employing and engaging. That's one more sector I feel is very critical. Employ and engage. Engage the people, engage the communities, and employ them as a worker in your own teams to basically push forward the things. Lastly, the key thing which we always are looking at is leveraging. Leveraging things which are in the public sector domain. I mentioned about Jal Jeevan Mission. I mentioned about ministries, Swachh Bharat Mission, there's NULM, there are so many other government programs that we are saying. Also leveraging corporate and private sector. Divyang is basically one of the key partners that all of us are also looking at when we are partnering through USAID and other things. But that's where what Divyang throws open as an opportunity of windows. There are corporates there who want to do things. There are corporates who are there who have their boundaries drawn. But we need to engage them because they also have a very critical role to play in this entire gamut of things as we speak. Development partners coordination. Now that's critical. There are development partners. This is USAID I'm talking about from my own background. There is ADB, there's World Bank, there's Gates Foundation, there's so many other people. Why is this coordination important? So that we can bring global resources to our country. So that's more or less just a very broad brush, Karthik, about the opportunities that we basically see that can be there. But I would like to also touch upon a very key component that I would like to say, which is, people should see WASH as investable. They should see this not as just a sector thing or thing that we basically need to address. We need to do better. We means now we are talking about ourselves. We are talking about this webinar. We are talking about the people who are attending in this sector. We need to be better at identifying the investment opportunities in this sector, including attracting private sector finance and others. Whether it's the financial return on investment, a return on health as you measure, Karthik, a return on youth as you measure, a return on our women as you measure, or a return on what is basically upon my children's education. I think we need to simply again, I'm saying, need to be in the right places with the right messaging so that we can make our advocacy efforts impactful. I think I'll close with that, but I think you have thrown open in this panel a great opportunity for us to look forward.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. We'll open the session for any questions that our participants may have. They're free to enter them into the chat. While we wait for questions, I have an open-ended question for both the panelists that we have here today. So the government is looking into investing into large-scale desalination projects across the coast of India. With desalination being such a capital-intensive project and requiring large volumes of water and having really harmful byproducts, what would you say is the correct way to go about it? Is desalination the right type of solution for India, or would there be other solutions out there? This either of you could answer.
Okay. So I think, as I mentioned in my opening remark, that there are different kind of requirement. You have a rainwater, glaciers, you have a natural water resource, then you need to look at the artificial water resources. In areas where you don't have any alternatives, you obviously need to look at the technology solutions. Now, obviously it has its own pros and cons. I don't think that's this is a matter of a debate that whether this technology good or not. I think that's because ultimately the water is required, okay, be it for a human consumption, ecological perspective, or for a industry. So that's going to be there. So I think, but I think the point, what I feel is important in terms of, I think we need to start valuing water. And I think that's the very, very critical in terms of the holistic development. And I think I just give you a very small example in coastal region. Okay, you spoke about coastal region. So I also worked in the coastal Gujarat for almost 5 years. And I think the coastal region, they had around 400 millimeter of rainwater. But I think every household there. So this actually started, the journey started, the Tata Trust started supporting this in way back 2005 before I even joined there. But they've started providing rooftop rainwater harvesting structure to every household. Now, and that becomes because one thing they were actually have a groundwater was saline, so they didn't have any solutions. The whatever the technology solutions, it was a high cost investment. So I think they were not in a position to afford it. So they started doing the rainwater harvesting structure every households. So their base of their households is basically a water tank. So they have like 15,000, 10,000 liter of water tank, and they capture every drop of the water into that tank. So, and I think at this point of time, if I remember correctly, more than 15,000 to 20,000 households across coastal region will be having these rainwater harvesting tanks since 2005, I think I would say. And I think if you go to the historical basis, Mahatma Gandhi's household in Porbandar also has a rainwater harvesting tank. So it's, I think, goes into century ago. So I think this whole, conserving water is very, very important. I think that's the way we need to look at in terms of the areas where we are going to have a very serious water quality issues. So I think that's the one way, but we also have started looking at the water as a one water. So we can't only work on demand only on a supply management side. We need to also look at the demand management element also. And within that space, it's important that how community takes an ownership. So whether they understand that, because they start valuing water, they will start looking at the options for solving their problems. Okay. Rather than if they say, okay, someone will come from outside and solve my problem, it's not going to happen. I think that happened for a longer period of time. It's not going to happen. So they have to find their own solution. So either they actually become a self-reliant for their water needs. So either they enhance their water conservation or a supply, or they can optimize their water demand. I think they have to create a balance about the water availability and the utilization, and create that balance so that they can become a self-reliant. I think we can't get into, we can always go into the debate of actually, urban taking more water from the water sources. But I think everyone, I think watershed, micro watershed need to become a self-reliant in the country, so that we can, I think, address this larger issue. And it's not going to be a easy solutions for that. That's, I think, I just a bit from my end.
Thank you. Mr. Anand, do you have anything to add to this?
Not much, but I would like to basically compliment on my fellow panel members on one thing which he mentioned in the earlier part of this panel discussion, is about how best can we use our existing funds. And I think that's very critical, Divyang. And I think that's also a key thing, that if this is already managed well, this is already doing what it is meant to do, we don't actually need to look around to do things beyond these issues. And, like, it is an issue of addressing all the things that we are looking for solutions. And I think we need better evidence on the status and opportunities in this sector, better mechanisms, and more accountability. And again, I think, Divyang, you touched upon these points. I think those are all very critical things to ensure how we can best use our own existing funds for this sector, and give the results as we are envisioning. Is it giving better access to drinking water? Is it giving household level of water access to people? Is it basically resolving the issues what Karthik you mentioned about saline, non-saline? Is it the best technology? Is it the lowest technology available? Is it something which the community is accepting or not accepting? I think a very deep, not much, but perhaps analytical viewpoint of how we are using our existing fund would be very much important for us to understand, do we really need additional resources or knowledge to do something different? And that's critical, because I know that there are things with our existing funds are not working very well, or maybe there are things which are still gaps to basically fulfill.
To add to that, so the government of India is looking at probably the alternative projects such as desalination and the like in locations on the coast, because they too have issues regarding the salinity of available water resources. Where saline water goes inland and contaminates these water resources that they have, these groundwater resources. Also, what about the drought-prone areas? In India, few locations have become very drought-prone on a periodic basis almost, where they actually expect drought to occur within several few months every year. So what would you say the government of India is doing to tackle this issue? Because with global warming happening and with temperatures rising, wouldn't this become more frequent? What options do the government of India have for these locations? Mr. Anand, if you could help answer that.
I think this is a key thing about driving the point of basically having more focus on water issues, because I think some of the results that came out from a report which was talking about water scarcity, and particularly some of the larger cities around the world, be it in South Africa and in other parts of the world, which basically struck the fact that the drinking water issues are basically come to a brink point where the reservoirs and other things are not only basically seeing less of the supply for drinking water. I think that these are very key things which basically are driving the world. I'm not just talking about India, the world to basically focus on things. But at times, I basically go back to the rudimentary issue that should I actually have a calamity happen to basically make me focus on things? Do I really need to defecate in the open so much that I need to have a national sanitation program in place? Do I really need to basically have so much of not proper usage of the existing funds for providing safe drinking water to pay so that a new program like Jal Jeevan Mission needs to place? But perhaps it's these things which basically work in tandem, that there is a cause and then there is this effort of basically doing new programs. I feel, Karthik, that because of these issues, there are other elements which are coming into fray, like the climate change issues, like elements which basically, it's like a cycle, it's like an entire habitat cycle, Karthik. I cannot say this, it's because of water, it's because of the entire ecosystem, it's the entire habitat. You're cutting down more trees, it's basically the urbanization issues, the pressure that is basically putting places such as India, such as places, other countries that basically are bludgeoning with the populations, which is creating so much of stress on the existing basic supplies of not just water, but on things like infrastructure, support, houses, and other things as we speak. But that's where I think I would say we are very proud in India, for the simple reason we have started doing things in a mega form. We've not just started doing things in a small minor form, which we have been always doing. And I think the collating of these things in the form of what the Swachh Bharat or the Jal Jeevan or the Jal Shakti Ministry as we speak is saying shows and reflects that we are taking things a little more seriously than what we have done in the past. So if this is a reflection that basically things are going to be better, I am very optimistic of this. And I think the way the corporates are joining the bandwagon to basically support, they were always doing things good. There were always things that were happening in their things which are called the islands of excellence or in silos. But now I feel that things are coming in together in a mass movement kind of a thing, Karthik. And I think that's a great way that I see things moving in the future. And I think it's very optimistic that it's just not about the SDGs. I think we've got much to achieve beyond that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anand and Mr. Divyang Waghela for this amazing session. We have a ton more questions to ask you, given both of your experiences in the spaces that you work in. But given the constraint of time, we'll have to end the session here. So thanks for answering our questions and for shedding light on the importance of safe water in a country like India, and along with giving us details of the roles that your organizations are playing, the important roles that your organizations are playing in this space. Thank you everyone for your for participating in this platform, along with Rotary, Bangalore, Whitefield Central, and Seva, of course, and all the participants for joining us in this episode. We thank everyone for joining us. We ask you to stay safe out there, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic. Be water positive, and see you again for the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.